We just been trying to make sure we want this shot to be lighter. Hold on, let me grab the other mic. Ready? I had an angel. This is Joy. Joy. Can I have you? Are you blue? Okay, you're blue. Hi. That's my white co-conspirator. I love my white co-conspirator. I have to give you context for that. Like we talked about it the other day. Oh, you have to figure out how we're clearly. Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we kind of just share. Okay. No, I'll hold that. Where are you at? You're second. I'm at SIUE. Where are you? University of Southern Indiana. Where? Oh my God. So next one start us off, and then you. Nate. Yeah. It's like I don't want to follow either one of y'all, so I'm gonna go first. I'm sure he'll do great, but you turn this one on.
I love your high expectations for myself. All right, peace and love, everybody. How y'all doing?
Peace and love, brother Nate.
Thank you. All right, how about this? How about since we can't touch and agree, how about you stand up, look to somebody next to you, introduce yourself, air high five them, something like y'all got to do something. Get a little energy up. Stand up, church. Let's. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. There you go. If they feel comfortable, remember the blue circles for people. If you want to come and give a hug, come give a hug. Caution, step back. Yeah. So, and part of the reason is not just performative. I want y'all to get up and talk. This is a plenary where you all are going to actually participate with us, okay? For my folks online, we're asking you to do the same. In the chat, your amens, your praises, your I agree, like, oh, that hurt, ouch, cringe, all those emotions we want in this space, okay? And shout out to Dr. Jess Krim that is running the AV in the back. You'll see those comments pop up there when they come up. So I am the opener. So if you've ever been to the concert, the people that perform at the very beginning when people still getting their drinks and coming in, that's me, okay? So just I'm setting the expectation for what you're about to hear. So this is what we're gonna do straight out of CRiT's mouth. Some conversations that we've had with eBoard is really getting, I guess, frustrated with how folks who claim CRT ain't from the village, probably never read CRT, right, are speaking on behalf of our village, speaking on behalf of our people, speaking on behalf of the legacy and the work that we inherit and we're trying to continue on. So this space, this platform is an opportunity to hear straight from our mouths, to hear that we're human, to hear that we're not fully realized, that we're not to the point of completion, and that what folks put out in spaces does hurt us because we're human too. So we're going to take this opportunity. We have 3 artists, really 2 artists and, you know, the intro guy. And we're going to share pieces. And what we want you all to do is after we share the pieces, we're going to break out a little bit, right? We're going to utilize the space, right? I know this isn't a very accommodating space. It's a very white space where everybody has to focus this way. But we want you to turn around and reimagine this space as our family, right? You're going to turn back to the kitchen table and have a conversation, reactions to the pieces that you hear, right? Then we're going to open up the mics down to then, oh, what was your reaction? How did this piece move you? What do you take from it? What's your impact from the pieces that you hear? Then we'll have the real artists come up. They'll do their piece. And then we're going to have a full conversation, a full meal after that one. All right. So let's go ahead and get this thing started.
Every time you, like every single time.
And I got a bad habit, and I'm a sound person too, and I hate when people cuff the mic. Yeah, I know. All right. So I'm going to get into this piece, and soon you will hear the title as it goes on. Choosing to perform. Dang, I'm already crying. Choosing to perform confidence and no fear doesn't mean I actually feel that on the inside. Someone asked if I was stressing while I was at the conference yesterday. I smiled and lied to a friend. Because I feel like I need to perform leadership, ignoring the crying Black boy inside. Am I anti-Black? Well, maybe since I ain't doing the thing that, the other folks do, and I'm not doing this to other Black bodies, then this can't be true. Am I anti-Black? Now, see, they them white folks, those crazy folks, they exploit, they commodify my body. They take Blackness and make profit from it. They reproduce the caste system. See, I'm a CRiT's scholar, and I teach people how to deconstruct whiteness. I would like to say I'm an anti-racist scholar. There's no way. But I can't escape the fact that I get paid to make white people better. Am I anti-Black? Now, I know intentionally I try to restore the harm that I have done to my community, the anti-Black practices that I have within myself, knowingly or unknowingly. And because of that, I know I can't be anti-Black. But I hide pain with laughter and joy to keep others out. Don't have the best track record of healthy habits. And that's very notable by my pant size. I prioritize my mental, spiritual, and emotional self and my Black self only secondary to any excusable and inexcusable thing. Because my well-being, it's not as important as the work. Am I anti-Black? I justify high blood pressure, an early grave, stress, and fatigue by saying the work is more important than any of me. Am I anti-Black?
Spoken like an artist, ladies and gentlemen.
So at this moment, what we would love for you all to do, turn to your family, turn to your neighbors, unpack, react. What was your takeaways? What did you get from this piece? Again, for our folks online, we're looking for your engagement here in this space as well. So take a moment. Silly. Yeah, I was just laying in the bed and I was just like feeling the pain. I'm just like, who am I? Like, how am I accountable for this? So, because you actually said something yesterday that sparked this. Yeah, you said something to the extent about like,
so his shoes are my cousin has those type of shoes. And like just even the performance, right? And the embodiment, like so much of what she said is sort of the crisis that my husband's going through right now as a Black person. And like I just heard, is it the inner Black boy, right? And like not taking care of himself, high blood pressure, and like several things. Like I'm trying not to cry because I'm on next, but like it's real and it's like crushing and the love is real and so much of like saying you gotta take care of yourself. So it's so crippling.
No one knows Chris Rufo's story, how it popped off. It was really this distortion and a rhetorical campaign. It was a deceptive rhetorical. It's clear that he knows what CRT is. He doesn't care if anybody else knows what CRT is. So that he doesn't. Okay, Dwayne.
First year paper.
All right, my people. So let's do this. We have a mic down here, as well as we have a mic for accessibility for the folks that we need to walk around. Again, we want to open this space to have an engagement. Again, I'm seeing the comments. Thanks, peace and love, Dwayne. Appreciate the comment. We want folks to engage us here. So reactions, thoughts, unpacking, so on and so forth. Anybody in the village?
No, I just wanted to apologize real quick. I said ladies and gentlemen earlier, and that was not inclusive. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
And about the poem.
Oh, you want me to do that too? Amen. So I'm assuming the title is Am I Anti-Black? And I love that you reflected on that, because I think there's this misconception that only white folks can be anti-Black. And I talk about that a lot when I'm doing sessions, right? Like anybody can uphold whiteness. Anyone can subscribe to white supremacist ideologies. And I think it's important for all of us to do that self-reflective work, especially those of us that claim to be about this work, right? I feel like it would make us hypocrites to only expect white folks to critically self-reflect when we're not willing to do the same thing, especially when our own anti-Blackness can be harming the people that we love and claim to advocate for. And based on your face, I'm assuming we agree on that. So, amen.
I'm just going like this because it's the three of us is like on the same way.
I'm still emotional by your piece because I want to add on to what my sis said about anti-Blackness, and how I was telling Mallory that not only am I working on a daily basis on the systems that indoctrinated me, right, in anti-Blackness, but what was so powerful about your piece, which makes me emotional, is that sometimes being pro-Black means being anti-me. So I'm still processing that, because this work is tough. And we talk about this work being collective, but sometimes it's very isolated. So I appreciate you naming the things. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I ain't got no tissue for you.
I'm good. I'm good.
No, I was gonna give him a tissue.
Amen. I love our family.
The collective, right?
I gotta take
You're fine.
Adrian Parker, he, him pronouns, from Miami of Ohio University. And if you talk to me the last couple of days, you know that I'm big on rest and taking a moment to pause. And so hitting that piece, hitting that portion of the poem, right, really resonated with me in terms of why do we feel guilty for taking moments to pause to attend to ourselves, right? If it's true that the work is always going to be there, then I can breathe for a second, or I can pray for a second, or I can take a nap. Because when I wake up, right, my email is going to be full and the work is still going to be there. Or God forbid, I wake up and somebody else completed the work. But a lot of us don't think like that. And a lot of us tend to really take on that pressure, and just in the end of it, we don't take a moment to just breathe.
Peace, y'all. And thank you so much for that commentary, because a lot of times when we think about self-care, we forget two things. One, that it should be, our personal care should be a reflection of how we collectively engage the people that we care about, right? It's always self-care can become indulgent. So now how do we think about it beyond the indulgence? And the lesson that I hear so much from the piece and your comment is breathing. Our breath is a sense of control and ease in a world that is maddening, right? So how do we actively pursue and engage that, right? And we think about it and everybody thinks it's cute when you see third graders engaged in mindfulness, but what it really is, when it's not bastardized, what it really is you being able to trust yourself in a world that does not. Right. So that is always the thing around, because we don't talk about, because the times are so heavy, we don't talk about the chaos of the moment. And what does it mean to really engage in recovery? Right, in our healing, right? And a lot of times the worry, and I really appreciate your piece, Nate, because the worry is we get so caught up in the rhetoric of things, in opposed to saying, what does it mean in the day-to-day when shit does not go right? Right? And I think that's really important, because academia can fool you. Mm-hmm. Right, and get you in this little bubble, give you these funky ass awards, and then tell you that you are the scholar of the century, right? All bullshit. So that thing around really being intentional and being able to see that, and our breath allows us to see that.
Alrighty, such powerful words, and I genuinely appreciate y'all folks' engagement. So I'm gonna hand it over. My sister Joy is gonna come up here and lay the gauntlet down. All right.
Come on.
All right, let's give her a round of applause as she comes up here. Oh, you got a mic on there.
A couple of things before I start. One is, I don't want to call you out, Nate, but you lied, because you did that. You did that. And but I want to share from my heart today, and just really acknowledge, thank you for inviting me into this space. Thank you for the conference planners to power through. I know, Timberly, I've had some inside scoop that it has not been easy, but I think, the opening of just being together, it's so healing already, and we're just starting the first session to be in the same space after such traumatic times over the last 18 months. So I just want to share a little piece that I put together, and so I'll just start. So, and my name is Joy Howard. So here we go. Joy on joy. I do not own joy, because joy is a human right. My version of white rejects the rules my ancestors plagiarized when they wrote into law that any element of what it means to be fully human is the property of whiteness. As a co-conspirator then, in an America always unjust, outside of but in complete solidarity with Black joy, I offer observations of my own Black children and children in my beloved community of activists who beg us to remember joy as goal, as possible, as practice. Joy as play. Team huddle, mamas and daddies cheering loud, touchdown pass, a signature dance in the end zone. Joy as resolve. Young Entrepreneur Squad, YES. Yes, you can own your own business at 8. Joy as resistance, protest marches in cities across the nation, hearing a collective cry for justice, a local youth alliance on Insta every Saturday camped outside the mayor's office, demanding the right to joy. Joy as enlightenment, a BLM protest on Monument Avenue in the shadow of Robert E. Lee in Richmond on his last days. You are Black history, other mother said. Take a picture, baby, because he's coming down. Joy as exodus. We out. Scholars, activists, teachers, youth walking out on oppressive institutions, because as much as we thought we loved the institution, it has no capacity to love us back. Some of the most courageous are building something brand new. Joy as giving birth to a new life in a mother-scholar community. You know who you are. I have found a maroon space to fiercely reclaim the wildest dreams for our children. Here we dwell among the trees and we run through a hide-and-seek reality, because the obscenity of robbing our humanity is worse than any threat of failure. Joy as justice. White supremacists call out, ready or not? Oh, we ready, all right. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. We're not hiding. We came out. We're coming out. We will continue to show up. Time's up. Joy as real. Derek Bell taught us racial realism, the permanence of race. And just as real as the tenets of CRT is the joy set before us, defiant joy, a hope in the unseen, the future written into our souls. Joy as yours. I count it joy to share with you today from my heart in this space, yet there are some things that I have no right to define. Black joy is.
So just like last time, take a few moments around you, discuss, and then we're gonna come back as a whole group in order to talk out.
Good morning. Yeah, I think the thing that stood out, at least the most I think the thing is like the demand of joy. Like that's where we at. Like we have to demand just the space that we come from.
Holding on to both things. And I feel like at the same time. You can say that. But I'm like, why is it that they want to jump to joy? Oh, this is probably nothing. This is just a trigger word that I have been really had like I've never done joy rather like joy as the go-to. Is it because it makes you uncomfortable? Like, because even in our struggle of this whole life, it's an act of just living outside from the things that is really myself and also lives. So anyway,
I have some thoughts, but yeah, you want to share a reaction? I hear what you're saying.
Joy of the Lord is our strength. It always feels good to
No, you're fine. I'm just thinking with the argument of like, trying to having a white mother like it's like this, like, oh, I gotta make everything.
There's no good times.
Like let's not have conflict avoidance. And I think it's maybe operate. I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know, right? But maybe it's operationalized. It's like, well, we can get back to the joy, then something in that space can be created, but not missing the fact of like all the effort, all the things you have to ignore to get to that space, right?
Like focus on the action.
Yeah.
If that's my coach, that's fine, but you don't get
To narrate
to
that.
divert attention to the not so positive. That was, well, I love your piece.
Yeah.
And I love your play on words.
Yeah. You're onto something.
Yeah. It's like a conversation of like when man taps it person says there's a bigger focus of equity than peace. It means to me that you don't talk about it's not like you need a holistic work.
You got to worry about all that. Right?
Exactly.
That's the same thing like when they say, BIPOC students and first generation students.
Right.
They're not. It's not an and. That's a period. Start a new sentence. Like that's because most of BIPOC students are first gen in the first place. So to say that a white first gen person is equivalent to a BIPOC, yeah, it's like no, that's not the same thing, boo boo. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just something
All right, my people. We want to go ahead and open this up for a full conversation, reactions, thoughts. I got a mic on this end too. Let's be sanitized.
There's always a song. There's always a song.
Okay, Eric, I'm gonna give you the mic. No.
So I think the interesting thing in our group is that we all shared feelings of guilt around joy and having to feel guilty for creating joy for ourselves, right? And even beyond that, right? This is one of the realest conversations I ever had with a group of strangers ever, right? But thinking about me going to a predominantly white institution, teaching students that when I ask them what made you feel joyful today is something they bought or something they can do or afford to do. But with folks in this group, it was really about like, what can we do for our community, for ourselves, for other folks? Like, and it's always that feeling of like, I also have to do this next and have to do this next. So can I find time for that joy, right? And so I want to just acknowledge, what I heard from y'all and like having that responsibility of taking care of yourself and taking care of others.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joy, for sharing. With my group, I shared that the part that really touched me was motherhood, right? Being a mom of 2 young boys and giving myself permission today and tomorrow to be here, to continue the work and finding joy in that as well, and not letting, mother's guilt stopping me from growing in this field. So thank you for sharing that.
Right.
Isn't that what you heard? As I'm mothering folks. Amen, Lord. So one of the things our group talked about that I want to share is, I think I said this. Well, I was about to say it like it was a collective statement, and it wasn't, right? So, like, to be honest, you know, like, yeah, Baker 2021. But was about how sometimes we forget that joy, or maybe it's not forget, but need to embrace that joy is what helps you through the chaos, and that joy does live alongside the crazy, and it's actually what can strengthen you for the going through, right? For the hard thing. But when you think that joy is what you get on the other side of something, it makes it even harder to press through the hard place, right? Rather than it is what's sort of either pushing you from the back or propelling you from the inside toward how you take up joy in these various ways, right? Whether that's joy in caring for self, or joy in caring for others, or joy in the victory of doing and accomplishing, or in the process of a hard thing, right? And that in all of that, there is and can be joy, but you have to not only acknowledge it, but embrace it and believe that it can live alongside your chaos and within it. Other thoughts?
I appreciate at the end of the piece where it was left undefined of what Black joy is, and I appreciate you knowing that you have the ability not to define it. I was sharing with my group, I've been in a lot of spaces, community spaces, because I'm in Maine and most of my audience is always white. And it has always been, it has often been a jump to joy that is brought up by them, even when we're talking about, let's say, counter narratives or whatever. And it's always like, don't forget joy. And it's been leaving me feeling some kind of way, like it's not your place to deflect the conversation to what you think is positive, almost as if you want to not feel uncomfortable. So I just appreciate the way that was left open-ended and that was acknowledged.
All right, family members, we're going to go ahead and transition real quickly for Dr. Jones. So let's give her a round of applause as she
comes. I just want to note a comment that was in the chat online, which is from Dawn Tafari, and she said, "It is my duty," or they said, "It is my duty to live well, joyful, and with purpose. My people lived and died so that I could breathe. I disrespect them in their walk when I do not embrace my opportunity to experience joy."
Ooh. Okay, Don.
An online performance.
Hey, y'all. I am Angel Jones. My pronouns are she, her, and Aya. The piece I'm going to do today, I wrote last year for my dissertation. I don't believe in conforming, so I defended my dissertation as a spoken word piece. So that is what I'm going to perform for you today. My dissertation was about how Black women respond to and cope with gendered racial microaggressions. And the thing that often keeps us from responding the most is fear of perpetuating the angry Black woman stereotype. So this piece is called Angry Black Woman. That light is mad bright, but amen. We'll look this way. I am not an angry Black woman, but I am a Black woman who's angry. And I am unapologetic about my righteous indignation. I'm angry that 60 years ago, Malcolm X said that the most neglected, unprotected, and disrespected person in this country is a Black woman, and his words still ring true today. I'm angry by the way that I have allowed your ignorance to cause me to shrink myself into the house Negro that placates you. I'm angry because of the way that this country treats Black women and disregards our humanity. I'm angry that Breonna Taylor could have been me, both on our campuses and in our country. I'm angry that I have to use our loosely because of the way that you remind me every single day that I am not welcome here. I'm angry that you expect me to be the representative of all things Black, but then roll your eyes when I introduce race into the conversation. I'm angry, hold on, forgot the next line, but that's okay. I'm angry by the way that you objectify me while simultaneously making me feel unattractive. I'm angry because of the way that I have to deal with the mental and emotional taxation of gendered racism during the day, then find the energy to work twice as hard to prove myself in class at night. But I'm not the only one that's angry. White folks are angry too. You're angry that I am proud of my Black womanhood despite how intimidated you are by it. You're angry that your attempts to belittle me have only made me more powerful. You're angry because of my ability to break the glass ceiling that you thought would keep me in my place. But above all, you're angry that I'm about to take the world by storm and there's nothing you can do about it. Thanks, y'all. Talk, reflect, critique, whatever. I just show up. Well, we can't reflect. Angry Black woman.
Do you mind sharing? How does that make you feel? In regards to like that angst around not being initiative or having innovation. Right. That's frustrating. Thank you. Good to see you, Kay. It's nice meeting you, Crystal. So Lorena, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Did you just ask
I don't like to like read.
Are you angry, mad as hell?
That's to do our poetry. They don't know. That's if you forget mine. I just went back. I was like, oh, those were good ones. But I'm like, the ones I said I think were good. I told my share ahead of time, and I was like very clear, like, just so you know, I'm not asking. I'm telling you that this is what's going to happen. And I sent her a video of me doing it. I mean, she's super supportive. Like, she a white woman, but she about that work. She's the one that actually told me about this conference. She knows my every year. So she was fine with it, but like my committee is also Dr. William Smith, so he was fine. And then my other committee member also loves it. I knew that all three of them would be fine. And my two external leaders are Black women professors at UNB. One of them who actually taught my CRT class, so like I wasn't worried about them. I was worried about the audience because at GW they put they announced it to everyone in the school. Everyone in the school can show up, and anyone can ask you questions. So your committee grows you for the hour, and then anyone else. I'm like, you raise my professors can come to me and tell them.
Wow. So what got you?
Love and support. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So none of the, did you have,
What you were saying
Oh,
earlier,
oh,
that it's more comfortable.
There was probably like 50 people, especially because it was virtual, so anyone can have their and, you know, some white folks ask questions, but it was
that's funny. When I looked into it, it was
Like, look at the camera. Look dead in the
I love it.
Wow, our faces tell us, so much a lot of times of our emotions.
Yeah, they screenshot my face a lot. I'm zooming in. Like, why are you looking at the screen like that? Oh, I didn't realize I was doing that.
My chair would be like, Larissa doesn't seem to agree. I didn't say nothing.
You don't understand, like it's not just us that are about to have
The mask ain't high.
I got used to it.
because I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So my dad
I love it.
Go color, put it somewhere. Part of the art.
that was cool.
It's not clear how you can.
All right, peace and love, family. We want to go ahead and bring it back together. Reactions, thoughts, processing. Where folks at?
Critiques and challenges are cool too. It's all right.
I just want to say I'm gonna need Nate and Dr. Jones not to have me crying all of it through here. But I love the distinction of anger in this piece that I thought was so profound. And making the distinction, and sis, you made it clear. I am a Black woman who is angry, but you also made the distinction of whiteness and white supremacy. And the way, like I wrote, the boomerang of anger just for existing in my truest form. And I think that that's what it's like the both ands of the ways that we are perceived as angry, but when we are existing and living and being and breathing, back to Dr. Stovall, this idea of breath, that it causes anger just for us being. And I think it's so powerful that we get that definitive term, and it's something that we experience almost every minute or every moment. And it's just such a powerful piece, and I'm so grateful that you brought it into this space. And I love you.
So as I'm floating to find someone, I just want to say in reaction, Angel, I think that cut, and I don't know if you intentionally put it in there or it just like a knee-jerk reaction in that piece, but that house Negro, like that was so layered for me. And as light-skinned folks, like I think was another layer to it that I don't know if everyone caught. Like I'm the acceptable Negro, right? Like my Sun-Kissed family, right? You can accept when I say it, but not when they say it. Yeah. So others, reactions.
And again, I appreciate the distinction also. The thing that always comes up is how do we come to grips with how we participate in the process of disheveling people not accounting for folk, right? And what that means over time. Because it's one thing to say it's happening. It's another thing to say, as a cisgendered heterosexual male, that you're doing it. Right. And I say this to everybody here because I struggle with that, right? Because there's the moments where I have to pull back and say, no, I'm doing that. Right. And now what does it mean to live in some form of first coming to grips with it, right? Because when you talk about abolition means that you have to come to grips with someone is being harmed. So now, what is the process and practice of you ending harm, right? But the ending of harm just isn't a structural or societal harm, but it is the harm that you are perpetrating yourself, right? I think that's the toughest thing, and that is a struggle, right? Because we know that has deleterious effects over time, right? So how are you actively willing to participate in that, right? And so thank you for highlighting that struggle that we should all be coming to grips with.
I was waiting to talk because I wanted to leave space for others. I also didn't want to make it seem like it was for lack of processing, right? Like you sparked so many thoughts in me in the moment that I was sharing with my group is teaching my course, Sociocultural Foundations of Education, and race being so ingrained in the foundations of education, yet being uncomfortable at times of how much race was coming up when it wasn't explicitly outlined in the syllabus. And how I had to negotiate that of like, I'm a race scholar and I'm a Black male, and yet here I am in this class of predominantly white students, and I'm like, are they here for it today? Or every day, because that's every time I teach is going to come up. And so but just negotiating that and having to realize that my hesitation contributes to their hesitation. And so I've really been focusing on like embracing that, like I'm a race scholar, I'm a Black male, so I see it this way. The examples I use in class are going to be Black. The material is going to connect back to race just because that's how I see it, and that's okay, right? And just leaving that space and embracing that space of this negotiation that I'm having. And I wonder how much what's happening in the news also played a part in the subconscious.
Can I respond real quick to what you just said too? We got time. But I think to your point about, to your last point specifically about, especially what's happening in the news, right? And I'm glad you brought it. It was a part of what we wanted to talk about anyway in this moment in time anyhow. But in terms of like the course itself, so I started teaching I teach a socio-cultural issues in education course, right? And it's the closest or best way to include critical race theory in our whole curricular program, right? And so it is the foundational theory that I use for that particular course, which means in order to do anything else in the class, you have to read and have to engage with CRT and to make it not necessarily more palatable, but because we only have this much time to also to connect it to other things, it's race and gender, race and class. But all of it is you have to use CRT to make those connections. So I'm just offering some background in terms of what I'm about to say next. And so in this political milieu, right, so many students were like, I didn't want to take this class when you sent out that we had to read the CRT stuff. Because I actually seen before class starts, Dr. Berry's Roots of CRT video. And so I'm like, as a precursor to the class, you can go ahead and get started because this is deep. And like, I know it takes a lot and we only have 7 weeks because of the type of program I'm teaching. And so let me forefront this 2 weeks out, watch this, right? So that when we get to the class, you've already got some background knowledge. And trying to navigate for other people to say, you have to do this. And the pushback of, I shouldn't have to do this. And I actually had a student who emailed me and said, in my state, they've outlawed talking about CRT. So, but like, there's not another class I can take. So what should I do? And I was like, okay, so my personal self was like,
Stop the video. We ain't gonna live broadcast this far.
They took your name off the screen, so you can be as honest as you want right now.
Zoom out. No, so my personal negotiation of it was more like, that's a very specific individualized problem, right? Because your state didn't outlaw what this institution can teach, i.e. I as representative of the institution that I teach at. They didn't outlaw that, right? So that's very contextually different, but I think on the other side of it, when you work with in-service, for me, it's mostly administrators, that what happens in their state is the law for like everywhere and everybody and all of that, right? And trying to really deconstruct that. Your institutional and structural understanding of how things operate is not specific to the district that you're in or to the building that you're in. And it is also specific to the district that you're in and the building that you're in, right? And so it's this really layered challenge. But then on the other side of it, 3 weeks in, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I took this class because I thought I knew, or because of what people are saying about CRT, that's not what it is. And in this moment, I think the challenge is, I know I've always been very protective of critical race theory in ways that's like, not everybody can use this theory, like you gotta be, you really need to have depth and read a lot and process and, have thought partners. And I think that's because that was my process for how to learn to do it. Does that make sense? But it doesn't have to be everybody's. But to your point about, because this is the way I do it, and in the construct of the course itself, right, is that when you teach a CRT class, that's not, at least to me, it's not teaching them to use CRT as method. It's not teaching them to use CRT as methodology, or at best, you get just what it is, defining it, and sort of a cursory overview of what it is, right? But it takes the years of work. And I think that's what is both most appalling, but also challenging in this moment where people are like, well, what is it? And I just want to know more. Well, I can define it for you, but it's really not enough for you to understand the implications of, because deconstructing white supremacy, we define that, but that hadn't made it go away, right? So like, all of those is layered challenges to what it means to both teach and work within and try to do this work, especially in a political moment that is constantly attacking and disrupting without clarity about that. This sort of, last night I said to somebody, you have to define the narrative, the master narrative first in order to counter it. And Gilborn said this yesterday about CRT, right? Is that they're trying to define CRT for us and then counter it. That's not our narrative. For those online, I shrugged real hard.
We still have a little bit more time, so if you want to respond to the good doctor or to the poem, whatever y'all want.
Other thoughts about the whole, like, where CRT is in this moment as well. Like, what are some of the, maybe it's questions, maybe it's ponderings, maybe it's comments, but just leaving space to have this open discussion around confusion or emoting about it.
Thank you, Kimberly and Angel, for that poem. I actually wanted to connect it back to the poem because in our group, we were talking about the end of the poem when you talked about the white anger. And we brought up the January 6th fuckery. So like this, like, there's just so much here, right? When I was hearing Dr. Baker talk about her student who said, oh, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can't read CRT. And it made me think all the way back to when I first started teaching at the graduate level. And one of my students came to me, older white, just for context, vet. And he says to me, oh, I was, reading, and I don't even remember what the reading was right now. And he said, and I saw a quote by Marx. And so he said, so I couldn't finish it, like someone was going to walk in his room and I don't know what. So luckily I have good mentors, right? Because my very young novice professor self was like freaking out. It's like, what do I do? So one thing that has helped me, and this is connected to the whole CRT thing too, because I also teach CRT, is like it ain't about me. There's a process in this university for this syllabus to end up in your hands. Like this ain't even a conversation for me. And I've gotten to the point, and I do recognize post tenure might feel different, but like I just forward that on. Like this ain't my issue. Like there is a process in place before the syllabus ends up in your hands. And the other thing is we don't have compulsory university education. Somebody paid for your ass to be in this class if it wasn't you. So that's like drop the class. Like, do you need to know how to drop the class? Like, I don't understand the question. Oh, but I need it for my endorsement. That sounds like a personal problem. So you might want to just go ahead and read the readings. So I just wanted to put that into context because, a lot of us are getting pushback, right? And it's like we need to push back in the getting back to the anger piece, right? So what I was sharing with my group was like they're okay, and I mean academia, right? Most universities, not even just PWIs, y'all, like pretty much everywhere, they're okay with the one angel, right? They feel like they can contain her, right? But then when we come in mass, which we're doing and we're growing and we're building, they're the ones that need to be contained. So then the whole conversation flips, right? And so that whole thing about policing our syllabi, policing our reading, that's all connected, right? To that anger, right? Because they are seeing the narrative flip and they're not part of that, right? And so for so long, right, they had that power, and then it's like, okay, that's slipping away. And don't get me wrong, y'all, I'm not the, post-racial, we all done made it because Obama was president and all that. I know it's a hot mess still, but I am seeing, at least in my institution and my circles, I am seeing a shift. And the shift is that we're in those positions of power, that we need to be on those search committees, that we need to be in those, faculty bylaw meetings and all that stuff, which I talked a little bit about yesterday. Like, we need to be the people at the table to say, wait a minute, y'all, this is what we said we was going to do. And this is what y'all doing. And most of the time there's a contradiction.
It is that it's time.
No, we said 25.
Huh?
25.
Oh, we got to 25?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. All right, can I add another comment then? So, hold on. Thank you for the pressure. So over here in the group, what came up was the juxtaposition of the poem prior to Angels and Joy and Anger. So I got to give mad props to Enrique on this and pointing this out, because it was like the interpretation of the two and those juxtaposed against each other. Not necessarily like they're in opposition or anything, but just the buttressing of those two together was very powerful. And then several of us noted like the delivery of the poem was not only insightful, but there was an artistry to it too. Because it was, I'm angry in a straightforward, you can't mistake what I'm saying, that translated beyond just auditory. Yeah, and I just thought it was important for us to bring that up. Did you?
Yeah, I just appreciated the way you did that, Dr. Jones. I think that's the way you performed it, the way you articulated it in a very straightforward, very direct, very clear, this is the truth way. That's, I think, the response to a lot of what's going on around the country. We need that directness. We need that articulation. And it just exuded confidence, power, inspiration. And so I appreciated that. The other thing I was thinking about too is I wanted to hear more about in your dissertation. Where did you put it in your dissertation, and are you going to publish this in a different format? I assume that you did the standard, findings section where you're really using your qualitative data. in very traditional ways. But I love the way the fact that you're able to use it as part of your dissertation work and can articulate those arguments in a creative way. So I wanted to hear more about that if you could.
Yeah, sure. So of course, as a crit scholar, I use counter storytelling because we're about that life. So I did this one as my defense, but in the actual dissertation, I did the counter story as a journal entry. And it is a Black woman talking about all the things that she goes through her day. Just really wanting to highlight how we experience racial battle fatigue, right? So what is it like for us all day long? The self-policing, the doubt, the emotions, like all of those things, and like how we feel at the end of the day, and then have to go back out the next day and kind of redo all of that. So like my chapter 4 is a traditional findings chapter, but then chapter 5 is just about the counter story and kind of what that looks like. But I felt like the participants deserved another counter story, which is why I created the spoken word piece for the actual defense.
Will you speak to what you just said about racial battle fatigue? Because I think a challenge of really understanding how you do the type of dissertation you just named is where theoretical framework or theory and methodology and method come in.
So racial battle fatigue, and the term was coined by Dr. William A. Smith at the University of Utah. And basically it acknowledges both the psychological and physiological consequences of experiencing microaggressions and racism on a persistent, consistent, prolonged basis. So some of the psychological consequences are decreased self-esteem, increased depression, increased anxiety, increased suicidal thoughts. But his work has kind of taken it to the next level and talks about both, as well as these physiological consequences, right? Like what are these physical manifestations in our bodies? And those include increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, stomach aches, stomach ulcers, all of these things. I always say that. So in my dissertation, one of the Black women talked about how she used to throw up every single morning, but only on the days when she had to come to campus, right? So because of that anxiety literally building up in her stomach and all of the, like what that was like for her. So Dr. William Smith's work on racial battle fatigue is super important and relates to Dr. Chester Pierce, who's the one that initially introduced us to racial microaggressions, and he called microaggressions psychopollutants, right? So like how it pollutes our minds, our bodies, our souls, and all of those things. Oh, and your other question, I am working on an article right now about the angry Black woman stereotype and how it relates to my dissertation, and this piece will be in it, and it'll include the lines that I forgot because it's early. But amen. So the whole thing will be in the journal article if they accept it. So we'll see.
When they accept it.
Amen. So we'll see which journal is, if y'all have suggestions on which one I should submit to. So we'll see.
Other thoughts or questions, reflections? Yeah.
So I just want to say, so as a young man, I was raised by Black women. And what that piece made me think of, so I lost my mom in the middle of the pandemic. She had a heart condition. Her name is Audria Jones, actually. And so every time she came to advocate for me in my own education, folks interpreted her as angry, right? And it was always, oh, don't call your mom. Because they knew my brother, they knew my sister. My brother actually is getting his PhD from University of Michigan. I'm in a place where I'm working toward my PhD, but we wouldn't be here without my mom advocating for us, right? And going to battle for us. And like, even though I know she wasn't angry, my mom was a very peaceful person. She was willing to be seen as angry for us, right? Every day. She didn't care if she was like, oh, I just woke up. You know, she owned a beauty supply and a barbershop. If she had to come from work, do whatever she had to do, show up how she had to show up, she was like, I would be interpreted as this for y'all. And I think in losing her was the first time I had to acknowledge I wouldn't be in the seat where I am if she wasn't willing to be seen that way for us, right? And for, you know, her grandkids and kids and everybody in the family. And the same with my other aunties, my grandparents, right? And so I just want to say, like, shout out to Black women and being in like just the willingness to be seen like that, even though you know the true essence of who you are, you're not angry, right? You advocating for yourself, you advocating in institutions that'll bring you down. And I really appreciate that vulnerability and like just sharing that even with us in this moment with the 300 people online, right? Just sharing that part of yourself.
I'm sorry for your loss, and I thank you for sharing her name with us and saying her name out loud. I actually have a heart condition as well. I have a pacemaker implanted in my body, and the racial battle fatigue for me during my doc program was so bad that I ended up in the hospital twice because of it. So this is something that is super close to me, but thank you for sharing that. Are you crying over there? I have one more tissue. She'll tell you that she's a Cancer and she's super emotional. And that's why she's crying over there again.
It wasn't just her. Like this whole right in here, the whole section. So I really appreciate you saying both the name. I was gonna say the same thing about saying her name, but then also what you just shared is I think one of the things we highly value in this space is affirming one another. And you just don't know how much you just affirmed me personally. And what I heard you say is the distinction between anger and advocacy. Because I feel like I'm advocating, but you're right, you know, it's perceived as being angry. And why is it, not why, because I know why, but right, but when this body shows up as an advocate, it's got to be from a place of anger rather than from a sincere place of advocacy and intelligence. Like, I do know what I'm talking about, you know? And so those being, so just think, I wish there was another word I had to use besides thank you.
I think that's important for us to think about, right? Which is why I started it with like, I'm not an angry Black woman because I'm not going to buy into your trope, but I am a Black woman who's angry. And these are all the reasons I have to be angry. And we have a million more reasons, right? Why we have the right to be angry. But in this country, being angry is a privilege, right? Like I've seen white girls in class flip out and be angry about things, and it's fine. They're considered passionate. But if I were to say anything close to that, then, oh, Angel, why are you so aggressive? Why are you so hostile? I'm hostile because y'all pissing me off by upholding white supremacy and whiteness. But it's a privilege to be angry in this country. Yeah.
And to kind of piggyback off of like racial battle fatigue, and I see a lot of people getting emotional, and it just makes me think, and it's something I'm grappled with for years, that I don't allow myself to feel that way. Like I shut down. And I understand, like I'll do it by myself in the privacy of my own space. Like I may go in the bathroom, but I hide. I wear that mask or that veil so that you won't, I don't know, it's not a sign of weakness because I understand sometimes you have to like purge, and I understand the need to purge. I just can't purge in front of other people. And we were actually in a meeting the other day with an affinity group that I belong to. It's all Black educators. And it started off with a meditation. And it started off with a meditation of just, it was a wellness meditation, like just, you know, be present and, you know, breathe and calm. And as I was breathing, I realized I can't breathe. Like I just, like this, all these feelings just started like boiling up inside of me. And I shut down. Like I can't allow myself to feel that way. And that's something that I'm working on.
I thank you for that, because actually one of the lines I forgot to say in the poem is that I'm angry that I have to suffer in silence because I'm expected to be the strong Black woman, right? So we talk about the danger of the angry Black woman stereotype, but we don't talk about how dangerous the strong Black woman stereotype is, because we often don't acknowledge our mental health. We don't get help because we're expected to just be strong. But our mental health matters, right? We deserve to feel, we deserve to be acknowledged, like we deserve to take care of ourselves. So thank you for sharing them. Manita, did you have something to say?
Yeah, so last comment.
And if you need to cry while talking, it's okay.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I say my heart is watery, but I feel like we need watery hearts to do this work, right? It's a part of our humanity. And it's also the release for me. Like hearing your mom's name, I thought that was really powerful. Because I'm that mama, especially with kids that attend predominantly white schools and living in a predominantly white neighborhood. And I own it. You know, I don't care the way I'm perceived. If my kids are going to be able to exist and live and be just the way they are, I'm gonna, you know, lay on the sword. But I think what resonated with me is that the way I think about my own mama, how sometimes I still see her as angry. Still see her as angry and also being angry at me. Because she's had to sacrifice so that I can be. And the work I have to do to unpack the way that I even perceive her. So I'm deeply grateful for that word because there's still time for me to even reckon with the way that I'm perceived as angry or the way that my kids see me, but the way that I also see my mom. So I thank you, brother.
All right, so we want to thank you all for your participation and your presence in this plenary. If this is your first conference, in all honesty, this is our space, right? As a community, we wrestle with hard things together, and to leave them there because it is a continuous wrestling, right? And you don't have to solve it right now. You're welcome to feel all the feels as we go throughout the rest of our day and things like that, and take time at lunch to unpack with somebody some things that come up for you that, you know, whatever that looks like for you, like make space to do that with other people that you want to talk to, or things that come up that you need to unpack, or further questions that you have. Don't hesitate or think that any inquiry into like, well, what does that mean, or how do I understand that, is lost. Like, sit with that, right? Sit with the emotionality of whatever that may mean, and we welcome that in this space. And I know, and I'm saying that very intentionally because I think in a lot of academic conferences, the conversation we just had would either not have happened, one, or if it did, it'd be like, okay, break. Right. And I'm just saying, like, we do need to break into our next sessions, but not to dismiss what we just shared together, right? To both affirm it and to say, let's take it with us as we go to our next things, right? So we're moving into concurrent sessions. If you're online, you'll need to scroll all the way down in order to get to the concurrent session links. And even if you're in person, if you're joining a virtual session, to do the same. If you're here in person, the rooms are, once you go out of the auditorium, they're either directly to your left or they're left, right, and then left. So there's two hallways here. So they're either on this side of the hallway or that side of the hallway, depending on where you're going. But we're moving into concurrent session now, and we'll join back together at lunchtime. Is that right? Yes.